Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Leland Melvin, Associate Administrator for Education, and on behalf of NASA, Administrator Charlie Bolden, and USAID Administrator Rajiv Shah, I welcome you to today's event. I'd like to give a special thank you and welcome to David Barth. He's my counterpart at USAID. We're working some education programs together, so thank you also for coming. And first, I'd like to talk about relationships. This is a wonderful relationship that we're joining forces to help change the world. If you take a look at the slide up there, as an astronaut, both Charlie and I flew in space multiple times. And if you look at this slide here, you see people from all around the world. We had African American, Asian American, French, German, Russian, and the first female commander. Now, when I got to space, Dr. Whitson, who you see there in the green shirt in the middle, she invited us over to dinner to break bread in the service module in the Russian segment. And she said, you guys bring the vegetables, we'll have the meat. And so we floated over with our rehydrated vegetables, and we were sitting there having this meal at this outpost 240 miles up in space, traveling around the planet every 90 minutes at 17,500 miles per hour, looking at the planet below, listening to Sade while we were eating our meals. But I tell you this because these were people in space that were at one time fighting against each other. And we were working together for a common goal to extend humankind and civilization. So as I look at the students, could the students please stand up in here for a second? If I look at the students in here, all of you are the future. You are the future of our civilization. You're the future of helping come together, working with people that don't sound like you, that don't talk like you, that maybe don't eat the same foods that you eat. But you got to come together. We all got to come together to make a difference in this world. So thank you for coming. You can all sit down now. So as I said, breaking bread together in space, sharing together relationships, it's all about coming together as one. If you go to the next slide, this is Tracy Caldwell Dyson looking out of the cupola. It's of our space window, looking down on the planet. And as we go around the planet every 90 minutes, you see so many different things. But one thing that you don't see is geographic borders, borders that separate people. It's just one planet. And this relationship is going to help us as a civilization come together to ensure that we get along, we work together, and we make differences in the world. And so breaking down barriers of race, sex, and even closed-mindedness. You must get along with people who may not look like you, sound like you, or even like you. The signing of this MOU between NASA and USAID is a fine example of relationship building, of coming together to make a difference, not just for one agency or even one country, but for people of this world. At this time, I'd like to introduce Administrator Shah. Could you please come to the stage? Dr. Rajiv Shah was sworn in as the 16th Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, on December 31st, 2009. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. It is wonderful to be here with you, and thank you so much, Leland, for those inspiring opening words and your kind introduction. I want to thank NASA for hosting this event and continuing to inspire our country and our kids. I want to thank Administrator Bolden for seizing the opportunity to partner with us with a huge amount of passion and commitment. And I want to thank in particular all of the students that have come today, because really this is really about the opportunities we have for the future together. And 50 years ago, President Kennedy asked Congress to achieve two incredibly ambitious goals. One, everyone in this building is very familiar with, the challenge to get to the moon and the challenge to be leaders in our space exploration, and to use that as a way to both demonstrate our technological prowess and bring our world closer together. And we saw the successful fruits of those labors. The other goal was perhaps less well understood at that time, but in 1961, President Kennedy sent a letter to Congress asking Congress to create the U.S. Agency for International Development to help transmit our values around the world, to look after those who were the most vulnerable, to make sure children didn't suffer and die from famine and hunger and disease and a lack of access to water and basic health. And for 50 years, we've been carrying that mantle. So to have the opportunity today to announce a partnership under President Obama's leadership to bring together NASA representing all of what we can do when we put our minds together and try to solve tough problems, and USAID representing our challenge of getting our values and our core compassion and commitments transmitted to the farthest corners of the globe to protect the most vulnerable people, is just a very special and unique opportunity for me to join. So I want to thank everybody for pulling this together today. You know, our logo at USAID is the picture there over there with the handshake, and it represents the partnerships we engage in with countries around the world. On commodities that we send, food that we send, right under the logo it says, "From the American people." But the reality is the things we do in development and the things we do around the world are also for the American people. We see, whether in Afghanistan or other parts of the world, that our core activities are a critical part of keeping us safe and maintaining our security. We have seen in successful engagements over decades in places like South Korea that we help create real economic opportunity for American businesses and American communities. And I see every time I visit college campuses around this country how we are part of expressing our moral values around the world and how that inspires students and future generations of students to do ever more to invent the kind of solutions that can really bring about tremendous change. There are two specific programs I think we're going to learn about today, the Launch program and the Seaver program. I'm thrilled that Carrie Stokes, one of our leaders from our Economic Growth and Climate Group, will be here to talk to us about the Seaver program, the fact that we can use satellite imagery and other geospatial data to identify where disasters might strike and to identify where, when those disasters might strike, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people might lose their lives, and then do things to prevent it ahead of time. I'm also thrilled we're going to learn about the Launch program, and we'll learn from our colleagues that are creating new applications of mobile technology and mobile phones to really bring human opportunity to people who have lived off-grid for far, far too long. It's been a real priority of mine to reintroduce science, technology, and innovation into what USAID stands for and represents. You know, just last week, or just a few weeks ago, I had the chance to visit a group of students at MIT. And they took me into one of their basement laboratories where PhD students and undergrads were coming together. Most had visited developing countries, worked in rural villages, seen how young girls often don't get to go to school because they're out getting water and then purifying it back home so their families have something to drink. Or they've seen how mothers forego meals even when they're pregnant so their other kids can eat. And they've then seen the disastrous consequences of that acute malnutrition on young children and pregnant women. And they were literally inventing the solutions to those problems. They were inventing new water purifiers that could help save thousands, millions of labor hours of girls so the girls could go to school. They were inventing improved products for nutrition, food products, so that the very poor and most vulnerable amongst us has a chance to lead a healthy, productive life. And I was so proud of those students. And in the same way, I'm so proud of what we're all doing here together today, because we're bringing the inventiveness, the technology, what NASA represents to the challenge of development. And we're doing it in a real spirit of partnership. So I want to thank the entire NASA team for really inspiring me and for showing all of us that when we're committed and inventive, we can change the world for the better in a fundamental way. I now have the unique pleasure of introducing Administrator Bolden. And I don't think he needs much of an introduction in this building. But let me tell you, he's a distinguished former Marine. He's in the US Astronaut Hall of Fame. He's been a CEO and a motivational speaker. And he's probably the coolest administrator in the federal government as a result of all of that. But what I'm so excited about is when he first came to see me and when we first met, he told me, he said, look, Raj, I want us to do stuff together that actually generates results for the poorest and the most vulnerable people around the world. And I have a sense that whether it's inventing new water purification technologies and using space-based experiments to do it, or whether it's just figuring out how to get this incredible community of inspirational leaders who have been former astronauts or current astronauts thinking about and talking about this next greatest challenge of our time, the quest to end hunger and poverty, the quest to extend human opportunity to the farthest corners of the globe. I'm committed to it, and I want to partner with you. And so for that, sir, thank you very much. And I'm excited to be here today with you. Let's give him a hand.
Raj, thank you very much. Thanks so very much.
Should I go over to the table?
Great. Raj, thanks so very much. And thanks to all of you for coming out this afternoon. I know hopefully there are thousands of people around the country who are watching this over television or whatever, but I'm delighted to be here today to take part in formalizing the exceptional relationship that NASA has with the U.S. Agency for International Development through the signing of this MOU this afternoon. I really want to extend a special welcome to you, Dr. Shah, and to your staff for all that you have done. You know, you've funded Seaver for a long time. You are the dominant funder, and we just go to work with you. And that's been a lot of fun. As I look at Carrie smiling out there and Dan Irwin, we've met each other at different places around the world, and it's been absolutely incredible. And Dan and Carrie are going to talk a little bit about Seaver later on, or shortly. Okay, I'm not going to be here very long. I see some of you going, whoa, how long is he going to talk? I'm not going to talk very long, but hopefully Dan and Sherry hopefully they will help you Carrie will help you to understand the significance of programs like Launch and like Seaver for what they do for people around the world who otherwise would not be able to do things for themselves. When we were in Nairobi, Kenya, they had just started working on drought and flood models for 15 nations in East Africa. And we had an opportunity to open the third Seaver Center in Kathmandu, Nepal. I mean, you know, was that the foothills? Would you call it the foothills of the Himalayas? Yeah. About, you know. But it was absolutely incredible to see these people really excited about having an opportunity to work with USAID and NASA on something that was really going to make a difference for people in that part of the world. I join Dr. Shah also in welcoming the students here. I'm particularly pleased to see the number of you who have been able to come out today, and I know it's a very busy time of the school year for you. You're trying to get through to the end of the year and hoping it'll end soon. I can see some of you smiling as I say that. Some of you hope it never ends, but your moms and dads are, you know, kind of hoping the other way. I hope that more students around the country right now are watching this telecast today. Over the last several years, working in close partnership with USAID, we've demonstrated the useful application of space technology to address a variety of environmental challenges throughout the developing world, using pilot projects and programs such as Seaver program, about which you will be hearing more shortly from Dan Irwin and Carrie Stokes. Our partnership in Seaver has been a model for the successful use of environmental data from space and on the ground to help decision makers better address the challenges of sustainable international development. The first Seaver operational facility was developed in cooperation with countries in Central America and is based in Panama. Seaver has since expanded to include additional regional capabilities based in Kenya and in Nepal, as I just mentioned. Our new MOU will serve to document our mutual commitment to expanding our efforts in this and other important programs. NASA and USAID are also working to turn breakthrough science and technology innovations discussed at launch initiatives and launch forums that have been held earlier this year and last year at the Kennedy Space Center into real applications of benefit to both agencies and, most importantly, to people around the world. Dr. Shah and I have a strong belief in our exploration of space, have a strong belief that the revolutionary new innovations that will help NASA in our exploration of space may also help USAID and their partners to address some of today's most difficult international development challenges. Our partnership will seek to address important health, nutritional, environmental, safety, and other challenges in developing countries in a manner that is mutually beneficial for the missions of our agencies. Dr. Shaw, this is a very exciting and important day for our two agencies, and I welcome the opportunity to work closely with the U.S. Agency for International Development under our new agreement to find solutions to developmental challenges around the world. I hope that the joint work that we will highlight this afternoon will serve to inspire students here today and those watching our telecast about the values of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in their daily lives. We need you, every one of you out there, not only in outer space, but also here on the ground, solving problems for the world community. Together, we'll continue to make a real difference in the world. And I do hope that some of you who have not thought about what you want to do in the years ahead will give consideration to becoming members of either the team at USAID or the team at NASA. So thanks again for coming out, and welcome to all of you.
Thanks, Administrator Shaw and Bolden. Okay, let me find my place. Next, I'm going to introduce Dan Irwin. He's a NASA research scientist with over 17 years of experience in satellite remote sensing applications and geographic information systems in the developing world. Dan is currently the director of Seaver, the Regional Visualization and Monitoring System, which is a joint NASA and USAID program consisting of operational facilities in Panama, Kenya, and Nepal, as Charlie had mentioned. Recognized in 2007 as one of the 100 steps toward the Global Earth Observation System of Systems, Seaver has provided key decision support information for monitoring the land, surface, oceans, and atmosphere. In addition to his work at NASA, Dan has promoted small businesses in rural Central American villages to provide economic alternatives to tropical rainforest slash-and-burn agriculture. And he's also built, this is pretty cool, he's also built a children's library and playgrounds in rural villages in Guatemala. Please join me in welcoming Dan Irwin.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. My career actually started about 20 years ago. Prior to joining NASA, I was working for USAID in Guatemala on a project where I was sent down there to actually map a new rainforest reserve. And my job consisted of using a first-generation GPS and survey equipment and walking through the jungles of Guatemala trying to map and demarcate this reserve. And as you can imagine, it was an incredibly physically challenging job, the mosquitoes, the heat, walking sometimes 20 miles a day. And then I did that for about a year, and by happenstance, a NASA scientist by the name of Tom Seaver comes down to Guatemala to do his field work. And he comes down there, and I meet him, and he rolls out these satellite images of Guatemala, and I'm looking at them, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, I just spent the last year walking around and mapping, and I can see everything I've done in about 5 minutes. And it was an extraordinary experience, and it taught me, of course, it didn't totally replace the importance of being in the field and working with communities, but it changed my life, and it changed my career, and basically from there on, I ended up joining NASA and dedicating my life and career to the use of satellite information and Earth observations for development. I actually spent several years in Guatemala thereafter taking satellite imagery to the villages and showing them what was happening in their communities and seeing what was happening with the advance of the agricultural frontier and showing them that their forest was disappearing rapidly. Next, please. Now, when most people think of NASA, they think of the Space Shuttle or the International Space Station or exploring the solar system. Fewer people know that a goal of NASA since it was founded is to study the Earth from space to advance scientific understanding and meet societal needs. And over the past 50 years, the population on our planet has doubled, and human activities are now affecting about half of the land's Earth's surface. And from that vantage point of space, using satellites, using our eyes in the sky, we can view and monitor our planet in different ways and better understand and look at our Earth, the solid Earth, the land's surface, the atmosphere, and the oceans. Next, please. And change is happening in so many ways, and one of the best ways to see it is from satellite. As you look at this image of Santa Cruz, Bolivia, in the Amazon basin from 1975, you see intact forests. And if you, next slide, please. And look what happens in 2008. And we're looking at about 100 kilometers across, completely dominated by agricultural parcels, replacing the intact forest. Next, please. And what you're seeing here is a political boundary from space. This image was acquired in the mid-'80s, and you can actually see a political boundary from space due to the deforestation that occurred on the Mexican side of the border, and Guatemala still had its forests intact. And that image, extremely powerful, was published in National Geographic, and it got the presidents of Guatemala and Mexico together for the first time in many years, and the Congress and President of Guatemala actually used this image as justification for the Maya Biosphere Reserve, which is the largest protected area in all of Central America. So it's a great example showing how an image, space-based information, can really affect policy here on Earth to protect our natural resources. Next, please. Where NASA looks at Earth from space, USAID works on the ground, helping people around the world make a better life, recover from a disaster, striving to live in a free and democratic country. And what's exciting with the renewed focus on science and technology and innovation, the agencies really have formed what I sometimes call a space-to-village relationship. Next, please. And one of the ways that NASA and USAID are working together is through the Seaver project. And Seaver, which is Spanish to serve, is a joint agency effort to use satellite imagery and geospatial information to improve decision-making in the developing world. And this is done through satellite imagery and maps and visualization tools and monitoring capabilities and training and partnerships. And NASA, through the Applied Sciences Program, enables science and applications, and USAID provides its development expertise. It enables the partnerships and the in-country staff and infrastructure. So it's a fantastic relationship. And I as well want to acknowledge my counterpart, Kerry Stokes, and thanks to her, Seaver really is becoming a global network. And I also want to acknowledge my NASA headquarter colleagues, Woody Turner and Lawrence Friedel from the Applied Sciences Program, who have been so critical in making Seaver what it is today. Next, please. So Seaver is becoming a global network. It consists of a program coordination office at the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. And we bring the expertise from all of the NASA centers that are doing relevant work to Earth science, including Goddard and JPL and Ames and Langley and Stennis. And we bring that expertise and knowledge, and then we have as was said previously, we have these regional centers, and that's really where the work gets done. We provide that knowledge and science and expertise, but thanks to USAID, we can enable these partnerships in many places, such as Panama for Seaver Mesoamerica at an organization called Cadillac, in East Africa at RCMRD for Seaver East Africa, and most recently, Seaver Himalaya at ICIMAD in Kathmandu, Nepal. Next, please. And Seaver teams at Cadillac and RCMRD and ICIMAD, they're made up of young and enthusiastic scientists and researchers, not much older than the students here in the room, and they represent the different countries that we work in. Next, please. And examples of some of the things that we do. Fires through slash and burn agriculture devastate the landscape in many places around the world. For example, in Central America, you can see in that image the red spots that are the fire hotspots detected by the MODIS sensors aboard the Terra and Aqua satellites, and the smoke that is actually crossing the Gulf of Mexico and going into Mexico and the United States. So we're able to use satellites to see where these fires are to help, for example, the country of Guatemala see where the fires are. They have limited resources, and they can use this information in real time and operationally to help put their firefighting resources out to the communities where these fires are occurring. And sometimes they don't even know that the fires are occurring until they see the satellite image which comes in daily. And then we've taken it a step further by creating a fire forecast model with the country of Guatemala. Actually, they took the lead in developing it. Some researchers, for example, Victor Hugo Ramos in their Park Service, where they take the satellite data and they bring it together with models, and they can actually predict the areas that forest fires are going to occur, providing a forecast. Next, please. A few years ago, there was an algal bloom off the coast of Central America, which affects sea life and the safety of swimming at beaches. And we worked with the government of El Salvador to customize products. So you can see that red area, which is the intense chlorophyll concentration, which developed into a red tide. And the government of El Salvador said that this type of product saves them $14 million to their fishing industry every year. Next, please. And in Guatemala, this is a lake called Lake Atitlan, and it's one of the most beautiful lakes in the world. It's a lake that's completely surrounded by volcanoes, but you can also see, because of the landscape, that yellow line, that's the watershed. So it's an completely enclosed watershed, and you have villages around the lake. And a little over a year ago, they started reporting a cyanobacteria outbreak in the lake. And then we used the NASA satellites to take an image of that. And you can see that green in the image is the cyanobacteria that was detected on the surface of the lake. And that image, it was so powerful, it made the front page of Guatemala's largest newspaper and resulted in an action plan to clean up the lake. So, and of course, USAID is critically important then in that plan to work with the communities to clean up the lake. Next, please. And of course, the Pakistan floods were devastating, but one of the best ways, they were so extensive that one of the best ways to understand the extent of the flooding was through satellite imagery. And we, through our Seaver Himalaya group at ECMOD, developed maps oftentimes several times weekly to show the extent of the flood as it occurred throughout last fall, and then seeing how that flood affected infrastructure and affected agriculture. So the products became heavily used during the Pakistan flood event. Next, please. And of course, training and capacity building is so critical to enable the researchers and the scientists and the students around the world to use these tools so they can integrate them into their work and make better decisions. And we have a program in East Africa called Seaver, together with the American Association of Geographers, that's giving students from Africa new opportunities to use satellite data. So you have students, as you can see in the picture, that oftentimes don't have the resources and the ability to use this information, and now they're doing all sorts of projects, such as looking at the land cover and biodiversity and food security in countries such as Uganda and Kenya. Next, please. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, our Earth is facing a transformation like we've never seen before throughout human history. I showed some examples from Bolivia and from Mexico, but I always feel like the image of Earth City Lights gives us the feeling of the extent of the human impact that's occurring on our planet Earth. Next, please. And to provide additional observations during extreme events and humanitarian crises, NASA is now developing a Pathfinder camera system called iServe for the International Space Station, taking advantage of ISS's unique orbit and the crew support. So during future events, NASA and USAID, we can work together and share that imagery during events. Next, please. Now, the Maya civilization, you can see the ancient city of Mirador. It covered many parts of Central America and was one of the most advanced civilizations throughout human history. But around 800 AD, something happened. The civilization collapsed, and it's estimated that 10 million people perished. And we now know that the Maya had cut down most of their trees to make their temples. And this affected the local climatic conditions, and you had natural regional conditions that were occurring, causing what we believe to be a great drought. And most of the experts believe that it is the drought that caused the demise of the Maya civilization. And as smart as they were, they didn't see it coming. They could not adapt to the natural and human-induced changes to their environment. And one sometimes wonders, had the Maya, brilliant astronomers, mathematicians, had they had the tools that we have today, the ability to observe their Earth, or the ability to then take that information and, such as USAID does, do something about it. And today, we face similar challenges. As our landscape is changing and we deal with natural forcings on the environment. However, with our eyes in the sky and our boots on the ground, NASA and USAID and our partner organizations and countries, we have the tools and we have the knowledge to better avoid making the same mistakes of the past and working together to make the world a better place for generations to come. Next, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan and Carrie. Thanks for that wonderful, very informative presentation, and we really appreciate the work you're doing together, this relationship. Next, I would like to introduce two young innovators who work with USAID and NASA, the State Department, and Nike on the Launch Project. Okay, I'll get you guys up in a minute. Josh Nesbitt is the CEO of Medic Mobile, and Dietrich Lawson is its Chief Technology Officer. Medic Mobile develops and extends existing open source platforms to support community health, worker coordination and management, community mobilization for vaccination and satellite clinics, as well as logistics and supply chain management, referrals, routine data collection, and mapping of health services. Their innovative technology has provided critical support to developing countries in Africa and elsewhere around the globe. Please join me in welcoming Josh Nesbitt and Dietrich Lawson.
It's really amazing to be here, and it is not every day that you're introduced by an astronaut. So I think that we can check that off our bucket list. So I want to jump right into it with the first slide, if we can bring them up, hopefully. So Medic Mobile started its work, if you go to the next slide again. Medic Mobile started its work in 2008 at a single hospital in rural Malawi, where 2 doctors were serving 250,000 people spread 100 miles in every direction. So you literally had patients who were walking 60, 80, 100 miles to access care. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a picture of Dixon in the middle of the photo here. And Dixon was one of about 500 volunteer community health workers who had been charged and had stepped up himself to decentralize patient care and be the front line of global health in his local community. And I had a conversation with Dixon one day, and he said he was walking 45 miles every 4 days to hand-deliver paper reports. And it was really clear that these health workers were just as disconnected as the patients were from this clinic and its resources. But I had a better mobile phone signal in rural Malawi than I did in Palo Alto. I was a Stanford undergrad at the time, and I met a guy who was coding and hacking away, living out of a van on the edge of campus, creating a really useful piece of software. And on the next slide, you'll see a shot of Frontline SMS. And Frontline basically runs on any laptop, any desktop. You plug in a mobile phone tethered by USB cable or a GSM modem with a local SIM card. And without the internet, you have a functioning SMS server. This is really all that we needed. So if you go to the next slide, we went back to the clinic, distributed $10 mobile phones, $7 solar panels, and set up an SMS coordination system. And saw some really amazing things happen in just 6 months. The next slide shows an intervention, really simple. For the first time ever, there was localized emergency care, and 150 patients received care that wouldn't have been seen otherwise. The next slide shows a new patient tracking system that they implemented for HIV, TB, and home-based care. And this saved them thousands of dollars and thousands of hours in travel and work time, and the running operations cost for this program was $500 over that first 6 months. And maybe the most exciting use case and intervention is on the next slide. They started, and this is something the health workers did on their own, actually. They started doing active case finding for tuberculosis. Started finding symptoms in the communities and referring them for care. And they doubled the number of patients they were treating for TB in just 6 months through a really simple communication system. So we had these aha moments. And if you go to the next slide, fast forward 2 years, we're a team of 10 full-time, and we now work in 12 countries. And places that we work and challenges that we're tackling, it's places where mobile is sometimes the best, but also often the only way to get the information that you need to take action. And an example of that is in DRC. So if you look at the next slide, on the right, this is a delivery bed in a health post. And on the left, this is a medical records system at the biggest government hospital in Kinshasa. And in this situation, there's no emergency transport coordination. There's no coordinated patient referrals, and at some of the health posts that we visited a couple weeks back, fully 10% of mothers delivering are dying of complications. It's just unacceptable. And mobile is not a solution. It is a tool that paired with people becomes the solution. But we're excited about the very specific challenges and gaps that mobile might help to bridge. I'm going to pass it off to Dietrich to talk a little bit about the technology.
Thanks, Josh. As he said, I'm Dietrich, and I'm the CTO of Medic Mobile. And if you go to the next slide, Josh previously talked about Frontline SMS. And now I just want to talk about a few of the software things that we're doing with Frontline SMS, some of the stuff that we've built on top of it, and some of what we're using it for. And so this is Frontline Forms, and it's built on top of Frontline SMS. And it's really interesting because it allows you to do data collection on really low-end handsets. And typically when you do data collection, you have to buy PDAs or you have to buy smartphones. But this is a $40 Java-enabled phone. It's a lot cheaper than most of the other options out there. And you just fill it out on your phone, hit send, and the data is encoded in a text message and sent via SMS back to the main hub. And this allows us to do a lot of really interesting things. So if you go to the next slide, one of these things is stock level reporting. So envision that you have a bunch of health posts sort of scattered around an area, and they all depend on a central health office to distribute medicines to them so that they can distribute them to the patients in turn. Previously, the system was very badly coordinated. Some of the health posts might run out of medicine, and patients wouldn't get the care that they need. Now, these health posts can communicate with the central hub and get the medicines that they need, and all the patients get care. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see something else that we're doing with Frontline Forms, which is patient view. So, Josh showed that slide of all of the medical records in the Democratic Republic of Congo, all of the red pieces of paper on that shelf. And patient view is built to replace that, right? Because it's pretty inefficient, and we really we want to provide them with a better option. So patient view is a medical record specifically built for the areas that we work in that has a heavy emphasis on mobile. So it has basic functionalities like a normal medical record. You can collect data about patients, you have patient profiles, you have health worker profiles, but it also has a lot of mobile features, like you can send SMS between health workers, you can collect data from the field using Frontline Forms, and it's really specifically targeted for some of the gaps that Josh was talking about earlier. He was talking about how Dixon might have to walk 40 miles to deliver a report. Well, now Dixon can just type in on his phone, hit send, and that's all he has to do. And so it's really exciting. We also wanted to bring mobile to other medical records as well. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see a screenshot of the OpenMRS messaging module. So OpenMRS is a free and open source medical record system that's, again, built specifically for the developing world and is used in a lot of the larger hospitals. So we're talking about 100,000 patients or more. And the messaging module allows OpenMRS to send and receive all kinds of messages. So SMS, Twitter, email, and other stuff. And it's going to be used in the future to send reminders so that health workers remember to vaccinate their patients. And it also coordinate messaging inside and out of OpenMRS. And go to the next slide. So what you see here is text forms. Now, Frontline Forms is really good for low-end data collection, but we wanted to drive the cost even lower. So we created text forms, which allows you to collect data using just plain text SMS sent from any handset with SMS capability. And this is very, very useful. It was created specifically in the aftermath of the Haiti earthquake when we partnered with Google to create a system that would allow hospitals to share data about availability. And so a lot of these places, hospitals needed to know where they could transfer patients, or like where had a neurosurgery room, or what services were available in their area. And so the hospitals could send SMS to text forms. Text forms would parse this data into a machine-readable format and pass it off to Resource Finder, which is a screenshot that you see here. This is a web app that Google made. And then the hospital administrators could go on and click on these green crosses and see data about these hospitals at a glance. This hospital has 40 available beds. This hospital has a pediatric ward, that sort of thing. And so it was really useful for that. So that's all of the stuff that we're working on right now. I want to talk about some of the stuff that we're really excited for the future. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see a diagram of an algorithm that our friend Rob Monroe at Stanford created to help us automatically categorize and tag text messages. And so this is really, really helpful for health workers that might be sitting at a health clinic going through hundreds of messages a day. It would be so useful for them, because they have lots of important things to do, it would be useful for them to have a tag that says administrative, or urgent care required, or medicine request, so that they can more quickly go through these text messages, sort them out easier, and get on with the other things that they have to do. Another thing that we're excited about, if you go to the next slide, is Cellophone. So this was created actually by a fellow launch innovator named Dr. Oz John out of UCLA. And what it is, it's a piece of technology that allows you to take cellular level images of blood and other liquids on the back of a camera phone using only a $15 add-on to that camera phone. And so the way it works is you put the blood on a slide and you can take a picture of it with the phone, and then it's sent via MMS, back to the server. The server analyzes it and can detect things like malaria. It can do viral load counts for HIV patients. It can do water testing if you're looking at a water slide. And we're working to integrate this with PatientView and bring point-of-care diagnostics in seconds for pennies to the developing world and the places that we work. So we're really excited about that. I'm going to now turn it back to Josh for some closing remarks.
Great. So if you jump to the next slide, we have really aggressive plans for growth. Dietrich's 21. He dropped out of college for a bit to work with us because he was so passionate about the mission. I graduated a little bit early to sort of get on with it. We're sort of from the Silicon Valley and from that mindset, and we approach scale and impact the same way that I think Google and Twitter and Facebook approach their user numbers and their scale. And so we want 250,000 health workers to use these tools in the next 3 years to improve care for millions of patients. And programs like Launch let us do that. They let us meet corporate partners, government agencies, local and international implementing partners that we would never interact with. And so it's sort of proven to us that we're participating in an idea economy where what matters is the idea and your ability to execute, and you can move from there. So we're really excited about Launch and the things that it's offered, but we also wanted to sort of directly engage the American people in the mission. And we were hit with a statistic. If you go to the next slide, every single day in the US, 500,000 mobile phones, we just hit Earth Day, so this is another message, 500,000 mobile phones are being put into trash cans and desk drawers. And every single one of these phones has hazardous material, but it's also of value. And so we launched a campaign, if you go to the next slide, called Hope Phones. And the pitch is that you can give your old phone a new life on the front line of global health. We'll take your phone, we'll recycle it here in the US, and we'll take the value of that handset, the funding that we get from the recycling process, and use that funding to provide, to purchase mobile phones in local markets for our community health workers. So it's a green process here in the US. We pay for your shipping both ways, and the funding lets us fuel our mobile health initiatives abroad. So this is a way that we can partner directly with the American people. And I want to land with a comment that we really believe in the power of partnership, especially around big challenges. And we're really honored to be here. Thanks.
Wow. That's all I can say. Josh and Dietrich, that's some amazing work that you're doing, and we're really appreciative for what you do to help change the world. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to bring the administrators up to the stage to have a question and answer session. So give them an opportunity to ask some questions, and yeah, anything you want, guys. You gonna stay right here? Okay.
We'll stay right here.
All right, I'll help facilitate this. So anyone have any questions? Any students? Anyone else? Don't be shy.
And we'll also put Carrie and Dan and Josh, we'll put you guys on the spot in case there are questions that we don't know how to answer.
Definitely.
So there may be some.
And we do have questions from Twitter also. Okay. If no one.
There's one right there.
One over here. Okay.
Yes, I was just wondering what type of grants or programs that you are looking at for sustainable systems as we move into the next year, such that there's college students can get involved on the summer programs and also some fellowships and grants so that we can be, so that as they were doing, we can be out on the front line trying to develop some work.
I'll take a shot first. We've got a couple of things, a number of things at NASA. We do a number of grants through our education department that Leland oversees. The other thing that we're doing brand new is we're trying to fund 500 postgraduate or graduate grants in technology through our Office of Chief Technologists for the 2011-2012 school year. And we just put the solicitations on the street back before the holidays. So that's something we have not done before, and we're hoping to be able to do that. And that would be for study in any area of technology, whether it's something that you heard Josh and the other folk talk about or whatever.
I would just add to that to say that USAID has a broad range of programs as well for college students and university students, often geared towards PhDs and postdocs, fellowships with our new Office of Science and Technology. Alex, do you want to put your hand up? Alex Dagan, who runs that office. And so we're really trying to engage with and inspire more college students in particular, to get involved with development, but from a science and technology perspective. So thanks for your question.
Yeah, this is a question from NASA's Facebook, one of our followers. How will this agreement make a difference to third world countries like Ethiopia?
Well, I'll give you an example. For you know, when we were in Nairobi, Kenya, with Seaver, it's an ongoing program between our two agencies. What we're doing today is expanding the work that we do to include more education, more science initiatives. So a country like Ethiopia will be touched. And in fact, Dan, I got to ask you, is Ethiopia one of the 15, I think it's one of the 15 East African nations that is already a part of the Seaver out of Nairobi. And as I mentioned, you know, these are countries that are stricken by alternately droughts and floods, but nobody ever put them together before. And when we were there this past year, they were actually helping them to build drought and flood models so that you know, they could help to counteract the impact of both those tragedies in those particular areas. Yeah.
Hello, my question is, with Seaver, will this information be publicly available to those who would like to use it for science?
Carrie, you or Dan?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the information, all the products that we create are publicly available. The data sets are available, as well as the derived products. So that's something that is very important. So not only the initial users can take advantage of them, but the science and research community can as well.
I think we have another, okay, go ahead over here.
Yes, I want to follow up on the previous question. Often, universities in the U.S., when we want to work with our counterparts in the developing world, say in Africa, we have difficulty getting support for them, not for us. Because every time we go, we are told that you must go to the USAID mission. And frankly, it is not feasible for us to go for every project, to go to a mission in Tanzania or in Kenya and so forth and so on. And frankly, that has been the biggest single barrier towards a partnership, you know, with our counterparts, you know, in the developing world. Do you have any specific way of addressing that problem?
Yes, so let me suggest two or three. One is we launched a program under this administration called Feed the Future, of which I know you're aware, to help address global hunger and food insecurity. And a lot of that is by supporting the training of agricultural scientists, figuring out how to use mobile phones to get market pricing for crops so that farmers can negotiate better deals with middlemen, and a range of other things, knowing how to interpret severe data in Ethiopia so that you can identify what likely drought patterns might mean for food production and market prices and respond accordingly. Those programs, through that we've rolled out hundreds of additional fellowships through programs like the award program with an organization called the CGIAR, and with other direct programs with U.S. universities. So it's a major priority, and I was glad to see, even in Seaver itself, a component of that program being used to build capacity in institutions in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia and around the world. Because at the end of the day, and we've seen this before, when USAID and other partners got together and helped support the Green Revolution decades ago to deal with hunger in South Asia, a big part of the legacy we left were thousands of agricultural scientists and trained scientists and professors at universities and researchers. And that's very much what we're trying to do. So we've dramatically expanded those programs.
Okay, I think we have one up there.
I had a question with USAID. I know how you all were speaking on countries like Ethiopia and Africa. Do y'all also help countries that are slightly more developed to even become more developed, like countries like Nigeria and South Africa, who are slightly more developed than Ethiopia, but not as developed as America? Like, do y'all help countries like those also?
You know, we do. We have programs, and through Launch and Seaver and through the full range of our work, we work in more than 100 countries around the world. You know, frankly, in countries that have more local resources, we also ask countries to expand their own investments in these types of efforts. So a lot of times our resources are matching with increased country commitments, and we do that because we know we get better results that way, and there's more accountability on both sides. So, you know, results and accountability are a major focus for our reform efforts at USAID. So we are pursuing that, but with a real sense of mutual commitment.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. We'll take the one online now first.
This is for, one of our Twitter followers in Edinburgh, UK. How are you working with India on your programs and with the Indian space program?
We have an umbrella agreement with the Indian Space Agency, and I will tell you an interesting story. They had a tremendous increase in funding in 2010. When I had my first meeting with the Indian head of the Indian Space Agency, he said they were spending 75% of all of their funding on what they call meeting societal needs, the type of work that USAID and NASA are doing together, while still intending to develop a human spaceflight program. So NASA has a number of science agreements with India under the umbrella agreement, and I'm certain that USAID does something very similar.
We do absolutely, and in fact, during the President's visit just a few months ago to India, we launched a series of programs that range from agriculture to education to helping communities improve their governance and their transparency, all of which leveraged technology, and technology that was designed to be incredibly affordable and accessible very broadly to the hundreds of millions of rural Indians that live there. So that's a great question, and thank you.
Before we go to the last question, let me make a plea. Because we constantly hear people talk about, you know, NASA's work in earth science, if you will. But you have to remember, when Dan discovered this stuff at the beginning of the Seaver program, he had the benefit of looking back at 30 years of earth science data that had been archived. And it's stuff that I don't think anybody ever envisioned that NASA Earth Science data provided by satellites in what we call the A-train, would ever be put to this type of use. So what's really important, and I would say to the students back there, you know, just as Josh has done, and go back to school. Okay? That's the only thing I'll tell you. You don't have to. I mean, you could be like these rich guys, but go back to school. But think about the things that you can do to make a difference in the world, and you know, there's an incredible amount of information that's available to help you make that difference. We have no idea what's going to happen with the data that we accumulate over time. So I would encourage you to, you know, come check with our 2 agencies and see if there's something you can do. You say there's one more? I thought I saw
Emily has one more. Right there.
2 more? And I think there's one way back there.
Good afternoon. My name is Marcellus L. Mario. I'm a freshman chemical engineering major at Howard University. And my question is, both agencies have stressed students as the next wave of operations. So my question is, what kind of new programs, new initiatives in both agencies will be available for specifically undergraduates to help in both agencies' missions? I know NASA has a lot of internships currently available now, but what kind of new programs with this partnership will be created to help undergraduates really be a factor in fulfilling the 2 agencies' missions?
Answer that because you stumped me.
Well, you know, I'm glad you asked that. We actually will this fall be launching a series of very targeted programs for undergraduates in particular. I think the truth is, until quite recently, there's been a sense that, well, you know, you should be a graduate student or a postgraduate PhD, and then you can learn this field and spend maybe 10 or 15 years really learning the field, and then you start contributing and developing solutions. I think as Josh is just sort of a personal embodiment of something, of the counterfactual, that, you know, that undergraduates have a huge amount to offer. And the reason I talked about MIT in particular is those were undergraduate students. And it's happening on college campuses everywhere I go. Classes in global development, global health. These things are oversubscribed. People are sitting in the aisles, standing in the back. And we want to create opportunities for undergraduate students to really figure out how can you be creative and use the skills, insights, technology, and sense of confidence that you bring that these are solvable problems that we can develop business models or tools like mobile medic or use geospatial data to really help people see things a different way and change the way they think. And you don't have to wait. You can do that as an undergrad, and we're going to have a series of programs to support that. So we're working on that, and we'll get back to you in the fall. But please do look at our website, usaid.gov, for more information about that. And we have a science and technology tag there. You can click on that. There'll be more right there. But thanks for that question.
There's one more question at the top.
Hello, I'm a UCLA student. I'm working at State Department. I have a question about women in science and women in science and technology. How are you encouraging women and girls in the developing world to pursue more careers in science and technology?
I wish we had Rebecca Spike Kaiser here, who we're very active with the First Ladies, actually with the White House is an initiative on women in science and engineering, as I'm certain USAID is. But we actually, if you go to the NASA website, there's a huge feature on women at NASA, and I think it will give you some insight into the types of programs that our employees are engaged in. I would encourage you to try to find some of the young ladies who are here, and young is a relative term, okay? I always get complaints when I use that word. I am 64 years young, so I am a young person. You're as young as you are in here. But as you get ready to leave here, I'd invite you to talk to any of the women that you see here who may happen to be working for either NASA or USAID, and have them tell you what it is that they do. But go to the NASA website for one and look at women in NASA, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting.
All right, with that, let's thank the administrators for their time. Okay, so next I'd like to introduce Dr. Alex Dagan. Dr. Dagan is a science and technology, you can sit back here. Yeah. Sorry about that. Dr. Dagan is a science and technology advisor to the administrator of USAID and heads the Office of Science and Technology within the new Bureau of Policy, Planning, and Learning. As the S&T advisor, Dr. Dagan serves as the key focal point for implementing the administrator's vision to restore science and technology to its rightful place within USAID and ensure that USAID is the global leader on employing science, technology, and creativity to help solve traditional and persistent development challenges in novel ways. He has a PhD and master's degree from the University of Chicago, a law degree from the University of California, and a Bachelor of Science degree from Duke University. Whoa, a lot of degrees there. He is chosen, talk to Dietrich in a minute. He was chosen as an icon of science by Seed magazine in 2005 and has received international recognition for his research and professional work. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dagan.
Man, what an impressive day. One of the things that overly long intro on my bio probably didn't mention is the fact that I benefited from so many years of NASA data in terms of Landsat data and MODIS data and other imagery in terms of getting my own PhD done. So thank you very much for all the work that's gone into that. I remember meeting Woody Turner across a foosball table in England at a scientific conference and finding out how much NASA does for researchers. It's clear that NASA and USAID both do things that involve large, audacious goals. They take on the grand challenges of our lifetimes. They put humans into space, connect the world to knowledge, harvest and store energy from the sun. Both agencies carry out vital missions for American people and protecting American homelands. NASA creates technologies and innovations that keep Americans alive in the most extreme environments. But we can apply those insights and those breakthroughs to solve some of the most challenging problems at home in the developing world. And when NASA's technology is leveraged against the deep international development expertise at USAID, we can do truly powerful and unprecedented things. We look forward to many more accomplishments that match or suppress the achievements of Seaver and Launch in the coming years. And as President Obama noted, we are at a Sputnik moment. We face new global challenges, and the solutions to them are actually held by you, the students, the next generation, and your counterparts in the developing world. It's pretty clear that despite the great brains that exist within NASA and USAID, all the solutions to critical development challenges will not come within the four walls of this institution or over at the Ronald Reagan Building. Administrator Shaw's remarks and our experiences as development professionals have shown that some of the most vital leading-edge work in development is done in university labs and research centers. We believe that places like MIT's D-Lab, the design school at Stanford, NGOs like Palo Alto's Design Revolution, and the Global Social Benefit Incubator at Santa Clara University, and countless others, are the engines of the most crucial thinking and advances in international development. They advance an ethic of multidisciplinary collaboration, of direct partnership with the developing world. And what's really interesting, it is student demand that is driving the changes that we see across our university campuses. Higher education is also an unparalleled engine of opportunity in the developing world as well as it is within the United States. And USAID is working hard at better leveraging the power of university capabilities in science and technology for development through new partnerships that are underway. The students, you are part of this picture. It is so impressive to see how Josh and Dietrich of Metric Mobile have shown you today what can be achieved. A small team of students that started up Metric Mobile from scratch, operating on a lean budget. They have accomplished so much, and they have so much more potential to do that. But no matter what your academic discipline is or was, I encourage you to stretch your horizons a bit more. Our most vexing challenges in international development require solutions from creative, multidisciplinary thinkers. That means aspiring entrepreneurs and economists should probably know a little bit more about water, infectious diseases, and environment, while mechanical engineers might want to delve into economics, design, or anthropology more deeply. I'm sure the audience in this room has heard this quote many times, so I'm going to repeat it because it's really applicable to what we're doing in the developing world. As President Kennedy said in his address at Rice University, we chose to go to the moon in this decade and not to do other things, not because they're easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energy and skills. Because that challenge is one we're willing to accept, one we're willing to postpone, and one that we intend to win in others too. This administration and these administrators have chosen to also take on some of the hardest challenges in the world in development. They have chosen to be bold. They have chosen to do big things. And to paraphrase President Kennedy again, it will not be one man that will be doing these challenges, but it will be an entire nation, for all of us must work to put them there. The same applies to the goals we discussed this day. With that, I invite our two esteemed administrators to retake the stage to sign the MOU, and thank you.
Forgot about that part.
Fantastic.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the program.